Okay, thank you everybody for remaining with us for the ultimate session. I'm going to call it the ultimate session. Like makes it sound super important.
It's the final countdown.
The ultimate session of the day here at FinTech LIVE London 2023, day one. Thank you for our virtual audience joining us, and it's great to see people still physically here in person as well. I hope you've had a great day. I've certainly learnt a lot about FinTech and the current trends and developments that are happening. I think we've had some fantastic speakers, and we've got one more lined up to finish things off in style. Now, this is not Claire, who was due to be joining us today. Unfortunately, she cannot make it, so we have her colleague, Nicholls, who's joining us instead. So, Michael, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself and tell us more about the company you're here representing.
Okay. First of all, I apologise on behalf of Claire. She can't be here. For those of you interested in the metaverse, I'm the digital twin. So I'll try and replicate what she would have talked to you about. I work currently for a company called EPAM. We're the largest technology company you never heard of. We're about 60,000 people. I know, and you still never heard of us. We are operating in over 100 countries, predominantly banking and finance, retail, life healthcare, and we do the complete solution set from the consulting, understanding what the problems are, understanding new regulations coming in, through to how they will impact your business, what you can do to address them, and then helping you with implementation. And we work, although we don't ourselves create products that we sell, we like to think of ourselves as the power behind the throne. We're working with some of the largest companies out there, developing their products that you use. So that's EPAM. I'm probably the most boring person here. I started as an assembler programmer a gazillion years ago. My first ever piece of software was for NatWest Bank, Nostro-Vostro reconciliation, and I'll have some sympathy now. I came out of university, degree in computer science. Can you resolve this issue with Nostro-Vostro reconciliation? To which the answer is, if someone explains Nostro-Vostro reconciliation, I might have a fighting chance. I then moved over more into accounting, because I wanted to learn what Nostro-Vostro reconciliation was. And then I realized that everything happening in accounting was being driven by lawyers. So I studied law. I said I was the most boring person here. I studied law. I qualified as a barrister, subsequently as a solicitor. I worked at the European Central Bank in Frankfurt for a number of years, involved in drafting regulations and as a rapporteur and working on some enforcement action. So now I'm very much with EPAM, a sort of a gamekeeper turned poacher, helping people like you understand the regulations, how they impact your business, and helping you change your business for the benefit of your clients.
Okay, well that certainly doesn't sound boring, and you've tried to position yourself very much in the old school, but we're talking about open banking and generative AI here. So you're going to be discussing those future technologies and obviously emerging technologies with us and with our audience here. So tell us a little bit about your understanding of open banking in terms of what it is and what the opportunities are there.
So I like to think of this as a bit like, you know when you were at school and you were doing physics and you did Newton's laws of motion. Newton's first law of motion, a body stays at rest until an external force is applied. This was banking for decades, millennia. It was exactly the same. Even when computers came, they were just electronic ledgers. There was no big leap forward in the ways that banks worked. Then FinTech started coming. Newton's second law. When you apply an external force, the reaction will be equal and opposite. So there was nothing at first. It was too small. There were just a few odd FinTechs. The regulators wanted to stimulate competition. They still do. And one way they have done this is with open banking. So, as you know, with PSD2, Payment Services Directive, and with things that have happened here in the UK, what the regulator did was ask the large banks to basically open up their systems to their competitors. And in the UK, we had the 9 largest banks being instructed, to open their doors to these competitors who had really sexy applications running on computers, not staid banks that only opened from 9:30 to 4:30. And they were doing all this incredible stuff. You could put your money in pots, you could round transactions up and save money. And there was a real buzz around it. We had Starling Bank coming along with Anne Boden. We had the spin-off with Monzo. All these things were happening. The 9 banks didn't move quite as fast as the FCA wanted. The FCA, if you look at the website, wrote a few letters to encourage them to be more cooperative. And eventually, we found that there's a whole ecosystem of those fintechs who are exploiting the open banking APIs, both in the UK, across the world now. And they're using that to develop innovative products. The number of large banks I went to that says, how did Revolut create so many new products and offerings so fast? How do these people onboard customers so fast? And again, the FCA sit up and take notice. And again, you can see it on the FCA website. They write a Dear CEO letter to the fintechs saying, basically, we're a bit concerned that you're forgetting some of the basics: money laundering, back office processes, customer service. It's very easy to open an account, but it's impossible to close an account. Cue discussion on consumer duty for another time. So that whole open banking has opened up opportunities for fintechs, for challenger banks. And the other part that we've seen, for every action there's an equal and opposite one, several of the traditional banks tried to create their own digital banks. And as we all know, some have been successful, some have been demonstrable failures. So that leads us really to where we are today with open banking. There are still lots of initiatives coming on, and I'm sure we'll talk in a minute about AI, because no presentation is complete without a reference to AI. So Rishi Sunak said to me the other day. We'll talk about AI. But what has now happened is we're moving into that next phase. So the regulators have had a look round, and in the EU, my former colleagues at the ECB and other people have looked around and they said, well, the way that PSD2 was implemented basically left it to individual national authorities as to how they implemented the regulations within guardrails. So there was quite a lot of variability from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. And how they enforced it was also variable from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. And we also see this now with the new AML6, the Money Laundering Directive, which is trying to enforce standardization across the whole of the EU, because different countries were more generous to innovation than other countries. So PSD3 is on the starting blocks. 28th of June, out comes a new package. We have both PSD3, talk about it in a second, and allied to that, we have this new EU digital finance platform or package. So what's happening with PSD3? It's basically going to cut up PSD2. It's going to change it into a directive and a regulation so that there's less flexibility for member states as to how they implement it. So that's where the regulations will come in. There'll still be some flexibility in how you register and how that is maintained. But how the open banking actually works is going to be moved from being a PSD3 to the payment services regulations. So there is a slew of regulations being put together. It's not yet final. Anything I tell you today could change. You know all the caveats that lawyers put up behind them. You know, past performance is no guarantee to future performance, etc. Don't trust anything I say, all that sort of thing. Or as Lord Justice Collins famously said, the large print giveth and the small print taketh away. Thank you, sir. That was very kind of you. I thought it was much more funny when he actually said it in court, but there you go. So we are seeing a lot of changes now coming with PSD3. It's not yet finalised. There's always going to be some negotiation between the different member states, but it's going to change the way that you, if you do payments, work your business. There are going to be changes into people who are excluded and people who are included. One of the things that's also changing is the buy now, pay later aspect. BNPL, buy now, pay later, is currently not regulated. Believe it, it's not regulated. There's an exemption, providing there are so many payments and various other qualifying criteria are complied with. It's not a regulated product. And the regulators got very concerned at the amount of people building up debt and then realizing actually it was transferred to a regulated product and they've got a black mark on their credit record. They can't get any more credit. They've got no income and they're in a really bad place. So all these changes coming in the payments landscape in the very near future. Watch this space.
Wow, that was an answer, wasn't it?
Sorry, I apologise.
No, don't apologise. That was great. It's been a long day for me. Right, you mentioned there AI, and as you said, we can't have any kind of conversation about discussing AI, and in this case, generative AI. So what's your take on how this is going to impact everything, and what's it going to change?
How many hours do we have?
You've got 8 minutes.
Okay, very quickly. If you're a financial institution, you've been using AI or advanced statistics for years. You're using it in your credit scoring. You're using it to identify exceptional transactions. You're using it to identify suspicious activities. Gen AI is just like the next generation on. But as its name implies, it's generative AI. For me, it just regurgitates what it knew before. But let's not overlook one very important topic. What is AI? I'm assuming everyone here has heard of the AI directive. Hands up, yes, no? Excellent, excellent. So you know it's not here yet. It keeps being kicked down the road. There are two protagonists in the EU arguing over what the content should be. On the one hand, you've got Margrethe Vestager, Danish politician, very much a libertarian, very much concerned of the impact of AI on personal rights. And in the other corner, you have Thierry Breton, I may have pronounced that incorrectly, Thierry Breton, believe it or not, he's a French politician.
Yeah.
You didn't know that, did you? He's a French politician. In a previous life, he was the CEO and chairman of Groupe Bull, which was like the French national IT company. So you can guess where his allegiances lie. He is very much on the innovators, the technology firms. He wants as much flexibility as possible. So those two are arguing over it. A year ago, if we'd sat down and you said to me, what is AI? I would have said to you, as a lawyer, but what it says in the draft is AI is anything in Appendix 1, and there was a list of topics. Great. You can see already, if a new technology comes along, it's got to be added to the list. That means it's got to go through the legislative process again, unless you have a statutory instrument in the UK. Anyway. So, that was fine. You all know what happens next. Last November, 27th, ChatGPT gets launched on the world, and all the lawyers jump around saying, hang on, ChatGPT is not AI, it doesn't meet our definition. So they come up with a more textual, wordy definition of what AI is, and then someone says, well, actually, that doesn't catch ChatGPT either. This is a bit of a problem. It's the fastest growing download. It had a million users faster than WhatsApp and all these other things. You've seen the graph. So they said, well, what are we going to do? What we'll do, we will pinch the definition from the OECD as for what AI is. And the lawyers sat back and said, this is fine, and all was good with the world. And 2 weeks later, the OECD said, we're a bit concerned about our definition of AI. It doesn't actually comply fully. So watch this space. What the legal definition of AI is may change. That's the first thing. That's the what is AI. The way that AI is being used is causing concerns, or could be used, is causing concerns. On the one hand, you've got all the hallucinations. There's a great example of someone who has an exchange with ChatGPT and says to them, are you a robot? And the response comes back and says, no, of course I'm not. What makes you think that? So one of the requirements of the AI directive is that if you're using AI technology, you must tell the user. So if it passes what we used to call the Turing test, Alan Turing, the Apple Enigma machine, if it passes the Turing test, you must tell people they're using AI technology. That's fine. So I've applied to your bank for a loan, and there were provisions for this in GDPR as well. I applied to your bank for a loan. Guess what? You turned me down. You turned me down for a loan. I'm saying that because there's one large bank that's just done that. Anyway, so what do? I don't go out and get drunk? No, I don't drink. I complain. I say, I want you to tell me how you decided I'm not suitable for a mortgage. So we then get on to the next development that's happening in AI, which is explainability. Now, what my technical colleagues will do is they will tell you about the number of differentiators and the nodes in the network and how GPT-3 had X and GPT-4 of 3.5 had 2X, and then there was an exponential growth for GPT-4, and there are so many nodes you can't tell what's coming out, and even if you knew what was coming out, all it's going to tell you is a list of parameters for each node. It means nothing. So one of the biggest challenges for banks going forwards is, what do we do? I say banks, finances, anyone who's using AI, because the AI directive applies cross-industry. You need to be able to explain what you did. You need to be able to tell them what data was used to train your model. You need to allow them to question it. There are also issues with human in the loop. There's in the UK here, the famous case of Aaron Bridges. It's so famous, I'm the only one here who's heard of it, I know. Man in Cardiff, walking along, sees a police van, sees the camera. There's a sign up that says, face recognition is being tested here. It's for a football match. And he goes in and he creates a bit of a rumpus and says, what were you doing? You were identifying me. I haven't done anything wrong. Can you do this? Blah, blah, blah. So it goes to court, and there was a man in the loop, which was the police officer operating it, so there was an exemption. There's always an exemption if you've got a good lawyer. So lots of things happening. I'm not sure if I've answered your question. I've probably rambled.
Carry on.
So we talked about explainability. We talked about having to tell people that AI is being used. The actual AI laws coming in, a bit like PSD3 and the Payment Services Regulations, are split into two. There is an AI Act, and the biggest thing that's happening there is that you need to go back, you need to do an inventory of everything that uses AI, and for a lot of large companies, that's a real challenge, because you've got people in a department, in a branch, somewhere, using ChatGPT, OpenAI, and you know nothing about it. You've got to take a full inventory. You then need to do a risk assessment of what that AI is being used to do for your business and how it impacts your customers. And if it's high risk, whoa, boy, you've got a load of restrictions. There are some things that are totally prohibited, potentially prohibited. We don't know yet. As I said before, the law hasn't yet been finalised. Things that they're looking at are biometrics, real-time biometrics, which is interesting. One of the areas of biometrics, of course, is voice recognition, turning it in to text, but also looking at sentiment analysis. Are you stressed? When you ring up the call centre, God help me, I need a loan, I need this. And some banks already do that. But in some cases, it's a breach of GDPR. There's a bank in Spain, CaixaBank. I've probably pronounced that wrongly as well. So apologies to any Spanish speakers here. CaixaBank, they were using, effectively, AI to analyse calls coming into their call centre to see who was stressed, etc. The Spanish regulator did not like this. I won't try and say it in Spanish. He didn't like this. They were fined €6 million. It was split into 4 million and 2 million. 4 million for the process, because they hadn't got approval, and 2 million because they didn't have the informed consent under Article 7, it's either 7.1 or 7.4 of GDPR. Now imagine if you want to do that, and you've got to get the informed consent of every single customer and person ringing your call centre. It's a big overhead. It's a big cost.
Well, that sounds like a big concern. I mean, I imagine there's probably a lot of people in the room here, maybe, I imagine, quite surprised, maybe, at what you're saying, or weren't quite sure the extent of the issues or potential risks with AI. Just so we leave on a more positive note, maybe, and briefly, maybe in like 1 minute, could you outline some of the potential gains to be had from AI? Some of the positives in terms of adopting it, implementing it, and the benefits it can provide.
Oh, I saw all the pens go at the ready then. It depends on your particular business. We know that there are some obvious gains. The call centre, people ringing in, being able to translate that to text and save it, being able to very quickly identify themes at a broad level. So you're not looking at individual customers. You're looking, oh God, we've got a whole load of complaints about this particular product, this particular service. And that sort of goes back to consumer duty as well in the UK. So anywhere where you've got a touch point with a customer and they're speaking, or with chatbots, conversational AI is a massive growth area at the moment. And you can, we could go through various examples, but I won't, because I don't like being sued. But there are lots of examples out there where customers get given bad advice about financial products. We had all the mis-selling scandals in the UK. One of the things that AI can do is, because it will encapsulate best knowledge, it can ensure that your clients get a consistent, high-quality experience, and that you haven't got one or two less trained individuals giving bad advice. So that sort of customer interaction is a big area for AI. In payments, reconciliation, fuzzy matching, AI has a lot of potential. We have some clients working on that. Fraud, looking through and trying to identify a bit more about what's happening with fraud. Yes, traditional AI does it, all the numerical stuff, but it's not very good at trawling through lots of text. One of the big things with financial fraud, AML, you've got all this thing now with ultimate beneficial ownership, with PEPs, with sanctions. You can't be opening accounts for people who've been sanctioned or are related or associated with people who have been sanctioned. And, unfortunately, due to unfortunate events across the world, more and more people are being sanctioned. They're being added almost on a daily basis. So having AI that can continually trawl through all the media reports, newspapers, all the rest of it, and identify names so that you can improve your whole sanctions and PEP screening is another big area. So there is a lot of potential there. We are just at the start. I'm really sad. I'm kind of coming to the end of my career and the end of this answer. I'm coming to the end of my career. I'm really jealous of people who are at the start or the middle of their career, because it's really going to change. It's going to be a much more exciting time than simply trying to solve nostro, vostro reconciliation.
Nicely circled back to where we started the conversation. I could listen to you speak for hours. I'm sure you'd be happy to speak for hours as well, but my iPad battery dying tells me it's time to wrap things up. So, Michael, thank you so much for stepping in and for a brilliant session. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.